Hey, church family, this is Pastor Steve, children's pastor here at Callahan First, and I'm coming to bring you hopefully a word of encouragement. And by encouragement, I'm hoping to put a little courage in you. So I imagine about now, some of you parents and even some of you grandparents watching kids, you're probably thinking, are these kids ever going to go back to school? I can kind of relate to that. But you know what? Let me share something with you from our source of truth, Facebook. Now, okay, I'm going to share from God's word in a minute. But this whole thought came about as Tina and I were reading this Facebook post. You see, somebody was kind of musing of what are things going to be like 10 years from now. A lot of these kids that are driving us crazy right now, they're going to be in college by then. And maybe they're going to be sitting there in a history class and they're going to be learning about that great COVID-19 pandemic from 2020. And they're going to read about how there was millions of people without jobs, how there was all this social distancing mandates, the economy was on the verge of collapse. And the kids might think, that's not how I remember that. I remember that I got to sleep in every day. And I went to school in my pajamas. And I remember that as a family, we would sit down and have dinner together. And we weren't running to ball practice or dance recital every night. We got to know our neighbors. That was the best days of my life. So as Tina and I were talking through that, she came up with the idea of how it kind of relates to the Sabbath. Now remember, back in Leviticus 25, God, through Moses, not only commanded the people to observe the Sabbath day, but there was even a Sabbath year. On the seventh year, he commanded the people, don't plow your fields, don't prune your vines, let everything rest. And he promised that the land would still produce enough for that year. And then even beyond that, he said there was going to be what was called the year of Jubilee. After 7 of those Sabbath years, that 50th year was a year of Jubilee. And then not only was the land resting, but they were commanded to give the land back to the original owners and to set slaves free. Later on, as the people were in the promised land for many years, they began to disobey God. And God sent them prophets, and they reminded the people, you know what? God told you to do these things. And if you don't do this, God's going to allow other nations to come in and conquer you and even take you away into captivity just so the land can have its Sabbath rest. So you're probably figuring out by now kind of where I'm going with this, right? And Paul in the New Testament, in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, he says twice how the people of Israel, what happened to them, the wilderness wanderings and all those things, that was for our example. So how about you? Are you kind of like those people? Are you looking around at what's happening now and stressing out and thinking, I just need to hit the fast forward button, get to the next chapter? So how are you doing with this? Has God maybe got your attention now? It seems like this year especially, a lot of my personal devotion time has always taken me back to the book of Ephesians. And in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 16, the way I memorized it back in the King James was, redeeming the time, for the days are evil. Are you doing that? Are you taking advantage of this time? Or are you just trying to, like I said, hit that fast forward button and just get through it and get back to some sense of normality, whatever that is? I really encourage you, take this time with your family, with your kids especially. Take this time to, take some walks outside together, play a family game, have a game night together. We even did this virtually with our kids that live in different states. It was a lot of fun. Redeem this time, use it to the best of your abilities, and hopefully 10 years from now, when your kids look back on this, they're going to say, those were the best days of my lives. All right, love you, church.